and diversifying our international commercial relationships with reliable partners.
We wanted to know just how much does this drop actually hurt the US?
Canada is breaking away from decades of US-dependent trade after Trump's 2025 tariffs shook the foundation and signed a $214 billion deal. Now, Canada is becoming the stable trade partner the world prefers. Meanwhile, US exports fell, farmers and automakers got hit, and global trust quietly shifted north. For decades, Canada and the US were basically trade soulmates, border brothers, economic besties. Around 75% of Canada's exports used to go straight across the border. It was automatic. You made it in Canada, sold it in America, collected your check, and went home. Simple, stable, boring, and that's exactly how businesses liked it. But now, that dependable relationship has been thrown into a wood chipper. Welcome to 2025, where Canada is fast-forwarding into new trade deals, and every swipe right leads to Germany, Japan, Vietnam, or Brazil. Yes, Brazil. Suddenly, all those countries that were once considered Team America are now cozying up to Canada. And honestly, it's not even subtle. The big reason behind this messy breakup. Let's talk tariffs, not the boring kind, the explosive, headline-grabbing kind. Between March and May 2025, Washington decided to roll out the red carpet of economic pain. A fresh set of tariffs landed like a sledgehammer on steel, aluminum, car parts, and even oil.
More than 10x the levels of tariffs in the first administration. On a gross level, they're actually greater than the tariffs levied in Smoot-Hawley. It led us into depression, where we lost a third of our GDP and unemployment was at 25%.
And when we say tariffs, we don't mean a little slap on the wrist. We're talking a full-blown 25% hit on Canadian steel and aluminum. And wait, never mind. That became 50% faster than you could say, made in Canada. You can imagine the panic and the price tags. Then came the auto sector's turn in the economic dunk tank. A 25% tariff slapped on any Canadian-made car or part, unless it was built inside the good old USA. That meant whether it was a Japanese badge or a Detroit design. If it rolled off a Canadian line, it was about to cost a lot more. That cost's not coming out of corporate profits. It's heading straight to your car loan.
Prices will definitely go up on everyday items. So from the cars we buy and the gas we put in them, to the iPhones, laptops, and tablets that we're so dependent on, to the clothes we wear and the food we eat like avocados, corn, tomatoes, all the prices are going to go up.
And just when you thought it couldn't get more dramatic, boom, a 10% tariff on Canadian energy exports, oil and gas flowing from Alberta into American refineries, taxed. Suddenly, even powering your house comes with international baggage. Here's the wild part. This wasn't just about auto and steel. These tariffs were broad. Consumer goods, hit. Energy, obviously hit. Car components, double hit. It was like Oprah went rogue. You get a tariff, and you get a tariff.
Most of what we consume comes in from Southeast Asia and China. A lot of those goods might be coming in and have a tariff slapped on them.
Now, to be fair, and we are being fair, the policy wasn't random. Washington was rolling out a broad economic protection agenda. The goal was reducing foreign dependency in critical sectors. Sounds fine on paper, but in reality, it set off a chain reaction nobody really prepared for, especially not Canada. So, how did Canada take it? They absolutely did not send flowers. Prime Minister Mark Carney, yes, that Mark Carney, the former Bank of England guy now moonlighting as a political brawler, stood on American soil and declared in front of cameras, "The old relationship is over." It was calm, it was cold, it was final, like a breakup text delivered in 4K. And that's when the floodgates opened.
I think 2024 have really seen a lot of front-loading happening. At first, shippers needed to react to the Red Sea disruption, and now it's Trump tariffs coming into force.
Let's start with the businesses. Label pack printing, which used to rely heavily on US clients, announced they were cutting off American exposure. Why? Because in their own words, if Trump slaps a 50% tariff on our goods, we're done overnight. That's not a press release. That's a survival cry. And guess what Montreal's steel component makers did? They weren't sending Christmas cards either. They warned US buyers that prices were about to double, and this time they weren't bluffing. Meanwhile, a pharma company in British Columbia started locking down deals with Asia. You know it's real when Big Pharma skips the US, and then there were the price cuts. Canadian companies, trying to move excess inventory, began slashing prices in US markets just to keep the wheels turning. Temporary fix, but everyone knew it wasn't sustainable. The message was clear. The American market is no longer predictable. And that word, unpredictability, became the star of the show. That's what businesses hate more than taxes, competition, or bad coffee. Unpredictability breaks contracts. It rewrites forecasts. It tells investors to run. And Canadian businesses heard it loud and clear. Which is why, instead of sitting around waiting for another tariff hammer, Canada flipped the table. It launched a $2.3 billion Indo-Pacific strategy aimed at 40 countries and 4 billion people. That's not a pivot, that's a global power play. And while they were at it, they inked a full-blown economic agreement with Indonesia, a G20 economy of 280 million people. The deal wiped out 90% of tariffs on Indonesian imports and turbocharged investment in critical minerals like nickel and bauxite. Indonesia called Canada a trusted partner. You don't use words like that unless you're serious. Canada's economy was expanding at a 2.6% annualized rate, beating forecasts. Not bad for a country supposedly reeling from trade disruption. Meanwhile, quietly, Canadian energy exporters began targeting American imports in retaliation. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was effective. And now, businesses across Canada aren't just adjusting, they're relocating. Contracts are being rewritten, trade maps redrawn, and supply chains rerouted. The breakup isn't emotional, it's operational. Before we go any further, if you're still with us, hit that like button and subscribe, or don't, but just know if you don't, we're slapping a 50% sarcasm tariff on your screen. Your call. Let's talk about where Canada ran off to. After the breakup, they didn't stay single for long. First up, Indonesia. Canada signed a full-on deal in late 2024. The partnership knocked out 90% of tariffs on Indonesian imports and opened the floodgates for investment in two hot commodities, nickel and bauxite. You know, the stuff used in EV batteries and aerospace parts, not small potatoes. Indonesia, with its 280 million people, didn't waste time either. They labeled Canada a reliable partner. That's not just diplomacy, that's relationship status. But Canada wasn't done swiping right. Nope. They booked a one-way flight to Berlin. That's right, Germany. Canadian tech and manufacturing firms started opening full-on branches across the country. Not just little kiosks. We're talking offices, labs, and long-term leases. It's all part of a broader EU play, since Germany acts like Europe's business landlord. The message? Canada's not waiting for anyone, least of all Washington. And then came Japan and South Korea, two massive economies that just so happen to care a lot about critical minerals. Guess who's suddenly their favorite supplier? That's right, Japan even officially named Canada a preferred mineral partner. And that's a title you don't hand out lightly. It's not like winning Employee of the Month. It's more like saying, we trust you more than the other guy. Meanwhile, India stepped in, bringing their billion-strong market and a hunger for pharmaceuticals and rare earths. Canada, ever the overachiever, deepened ties there too. Bilateral trade has gone from casual dating to let's buy land together. We're talking critical mineral exports, pharma collaborations, and multi-sector partnerships, all without the tariff drama. And then we get to the rising stars of Canada's new social circle, Vietnam and Brazil. Both are emerging economies with heavyweight potential, and both sit in blocks that matter, ASEAN and BRICS+. Canada's quietly integrating itself into those frameworks, playing the long game. These aren't just one-time deals, they're footholds in regions America used to dominate. So why is everyone suddenly looking at Canada like it's the safe kid in the classroom? One word, trust. Let's look at the numbers. In 2023, Canada's foreign direct investment, FDI, hit over 50 billion USD. That's a 9% year-over-year surge. While Canada was taking investor calls, the US FDI numbers dropped 28%. That's not a paper cut, that's a full-on confidence crisis. Global investors basically said, you know what, let's put our money where the grown-ups are. Now, let's not forget, this isn't just about who Canada is gaining. It's about what the US is losing. Because guess what? The trade tantrum isn't staying contained. US exports to Canada dropped by over 1% year over year. That might sound small, but for a multi-billion-dollar trade route, it's a red flag the size of a billboard. It's the first sign that this once bulletproof pipeline is springing leaks. And farmers? They're not sending thank you notes. In Florida, orange growers got hit with Canadian retaliation. In Kentucky, bourbon producers saw export orders evaporate. And Iowa's soy farmers? Let's just say unhappy is putting it lightly. These weren't just minor disruptions. These were major cancellations, the kind that throw entire planting seasons off course. It wasn't just produce and liquor. Over in Pennsylvania, steel distributors suddenly found themselves ghosted by Canadian buyers they'd worked with for decades. And no, this isn't something you fix with a coupon. Meanwhile, auto manufacturers across the US started redrafting contracts like mad scientists, trying to factor in the sudden cost spikes from Canadian components. And if you're wondering whether those price hikes actually reached you, well, Ferrari didn't even try to hide it. They jacked up US sticker prices by 10% straight out of the gate. And then there's Honda. Remember their shiny $15 billion electric vehicle plant in Ontario? Yeah, the one that was supposed to be a long-term jewel in the North American EV crown? It's now under review. Not because of anything Canada did, but because the rules and the mood coming out of Washington have become about as stable as a three-legged table. It's not about loyalty, it's about logic. Businesses don't want to plan million-dollar investments on policy quicksand. Canada's offering what global markets want, stability. While others flip-flop, it's building trust and locking in deals. The trade map has changed, and fast. Hit subscribe to stay ahead on who's rising, who's falling, and what it all means for you.